Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Tangents presented by the From the Middle podcast. I am one of three hosts of the From the Middle podcast, and in this episode of Tangents, I'm going to talk about the Disney Plus Marvel series Loki with my good buddy Brad. You might remember Brad from our last episode on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Brad, I've got three things for you. First of all, welcome back. Second, how are you doing? And third, give me your knee-jerk reaction to Loki.
Okay. Thanks for having me again. I'm doing well. And my knee-jerk reaction to Loki was it was my favorite of the three Marvel Disney Plus series. And I'm actually looking forward to the Marvel universe like more than I was so far. I was really kind of concerned about like how they're going to live up to Endgame and Thanos and the way it left off. I'm actually more excited than I was before for even the Thanos side of things, like the Infinity Saga.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you said that because that's why I had you on here to chat with me. I literally feel exactly the same way. Somebody asked after the first couple episodes what I thought, and I said I'm cautiously optimistic that this might be my favorite of the three series so far. And after the finale, 100% I agree with you. Like, it's been my favorite series. It makes me more excited for what's about to happen. And we'll talk about that as well. But I'm so glad we're on the same page because it'll make talking about it even more fun. Now, of course, anyone listening to this, if you've not seen all 6 episodes of Loki, please go watch them and come right back after you watch it and listen to this. And we'll
Yeah.
hopefully add something remotely thoughtful to your experience. But I have to ask, so obvious spoiler alert for anyone who's
Yeah,
not seen it.
spoiler warning.
Yeah,
Sorry.
spoiler warning for the rest of this episode. I wanted to ask you this right away. So in episodes like 4 and 5 or whatever, we got to see some more versions of Loki than just the female version of Loki and then the Tom Hiddleston version of Loki that we had seen, for more episodes. So my silly little question right away for you is, what was your favorite Loki variant?
You probably already know.
Go ahead, tell me.
Just you guess.
You want me to guess what I think
Yeah,
your favorite
guess.
Loki variant? I'm going to say the alligator Loki.
Yep. Yep. Alligator Loki.
Why was he your favorite?
Just because, well, A, I'm really fascinated with reptiles. B,
Uh,
I think it was really funny to just show my 6-year-old that there was a Loki that was an alligator, and he was like his mind was blown. He's like, how?
yeah. I
Um,
That's why I picked it for you because I'm thinking in my head he's going to like the absurdity of just a reptile that's Loki.
yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. I have to go with a little bit different one. Mine was classic Loki, and we got to see this really cool like sacrifice, and honestly he learns so much. Like, his story is really fascinating, and not only does he have an interesting story, but like other characters learn from him. Even in the short little bit of time that we get to interact with classic Loki. Plus, I can't believe they pulled off the classic Loki costume and somehow it worked and it was awesome.
well,
Um,
yeah. I mean, again, what's happening now that like you have all this multiverse confirmed is it in a way canonizes every single bit of Marvel publication or movie or TV show or comic ever because they're all variants of a multiverse. Like the Fantastic Four movies, we know the first couple of Spider-Man movies. Think
has
about
that
it, like
actually
they
been confirmed?
well,
What you're
from what I've
alluding
been
to
hearing,
for anyone who might not be
yeah,
in the know is the third Spider-Man movie. Was it No Way Home? Is that
yeah,
is that the title? So there's rumors around the next Spider-Man movie that comes out in theaters later this year that past Spider-Man actors are going to show up alongside Tom Holland. So that would be Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, right? So the
yes.
rumors are that we're going to see all three of them in the same Spider-Man film, dating back to like 20 years worth of different Spider-Man actors.
Well, and the Doc Ock from the second Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire is confirmed.
Yeah, so we've got a
And
couple
apparently,
villains.
yeah, apparently his story starts the second he sinks into the river, which I'm assuming is maybe the sun that he created, like the fusion he created, collapses into a black hole. Maybe that's how he gets sucked through, I have no idea. But that's what I would assume happens because he goes down with the miniature sun he created into the river. So I'm wondering if that's what pulls him over.
Which movie is that from now? Because
The
I'm now
second the second the second Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire.
the second Spider-Man movie. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it ends like that.
Fascinating. So I can't wait to see what happens in the future. In the future, MCU movies. Let alone we're about to get the Marvel animated show on Disney Plus, What If, which I think is just going to be a big animated spin-off of this whole multiple universes, what would happen and with all these different variants of these different characters. And we can certainly talk about that. But I want to go back. Are there any moments throughout the whole season, and we'll probably focus a little more heavily on the final episode of the season, but were there any moments that really stuck out to you from throughout the season that you really enjoyed or you found really interesting? Just because now it's 6 weeks ago that we would have just watched the first one.
Yeah, so what stuck out to me is we have to, like, Marvel has to establish a bigger, if you're going to make a bigger villain, I feel like you have to establish a bigger universe. You have to, it's almost like you have to make us feel like ants in a bigger world. So like when Loki sees in the desk drawer that there's just a whole pile of Infinity Stones, and
Right.
they're just treated like paperweights, like,
Yes.
oh, we get these all the time. That makes you go, wow, what did we just go through? You're saying what we just went through, like, for the last 10 years is insignificant in a way. It really it kind of like shocks you into realizing that you're, well, it's kind of like that. Is it Lovecraft where it's, is it Lovecraft? Where it's like a man stares into infinity and he goes mad, because it's like when you
Yeah.
realize things, like, humans struggle with the concept of infinity or
Right.
how big things actually can be. So you get that established feeling that, like, oh wow, like, and he says, is this not the greatest power in the universe? The
Yeah.
TVA, the TVA.
Yes.
Which I have to say, I don't know if anybody confirmed this, but I showed my wife last night. I went through Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Hmm.
When they're leaving, when Hank Pym is taking his wife back out of the quantum realm, there's that weird city that we never had an explanation for. It's like off to the
Yeah.
right in the scene, and a lot of people are saying that that's the Chronopolis. That's the TVA.
That could be
Like,
it.
yeah, I don't know about anything being confirmed yet, but they said later that would be answered because
Yeah.
everybody saw the city. They're like, wait, was that a city in down in
Right.
the quantum realm? And it very well could be.
Yeah.
So it kind of messes with your mind a little bit, but those moments stood out where Loki kind of gets humbled, because he's this quest for power, and it's like, by the way, what power, in what universe, at what
Right.
time,
Yeah.
like, what specifically are you talking about? Because there's all these infinite possibilities, and there's things and powers that are bigger than you and your aspirations,
That's
so
exactly right. It's so funny. It instantly brought to mind, a couple thoughts. First of which is I have a 3.5-year old, as you know, but not everybody else might know. So I have a 3.5-year old, and I was showing her, I was explaining, I was trying to give her a sense of scale by using the Google Earth app, by
mm,
doing street view on our street and then zooming out and showing her our city and showing her our state and showing her our country. She's too young, I understand, to grasp all of this, but I'm just trying to give her a sense of scale and show her the whole world and kind of spin it and say, this is just an app that shows us on the planet we live on. And then I'm taking her to like Cairo and to see the Sphinx, and I'm taking her to the Redwood Forest, and then of course she wants to go to see the local Lego store. As I'm
yeah,
trying to show like these natural wonders and all
she
this.
has, her priorities are perfectly
Yeah, yeah, I didn't say
aligned.
wrong,
Yeah.
but it's not surprising. So a couple that whole idea of trying to like zoom out to give people a bigger sense of scale applies perfectly in my mind to this whole idea of Thanos and the Infinity Stones. Like in 10 years, they built up that like Thanos was going to wipe out half of the like known living universe. And how do you create a bigger, badder, scarier villain than somebody who was just threatening to wipe out half the living universe. And somehow they just did it with a dude eating an apple sitting in a chair, in the finale
Yeah.
of the show. But you're exactly right. Like, you have to find new ways to scale things to make them feel different than everything else we've experienced. And one exception along the way in the MCU that went the other direction on purpose was the Ant-Man movies. So they would purposefully shrink things as part of the whole plot, but that gave you a different sense of scope because everything was tiny. So there's this massive battle happening and it's in a little girl's bedroom, you know? And
Hmm.
so that was fun and kind of went the other way, but you still had this bigger looming threat of Thanos. And so you're exactly right. Like, you have to find a new way to do that to keep people engaged. And very quickly, through 6 episodes, they did that. And frankly, it was really like the last couple that did that super well, of just creating this entirely new dynamic that we now have to sort of adjust our focus, or we've all been zoomed out a little bit further and go, holy cow, okay, this is an even bigger threat than Thanos.
Yeah, well, they have to make us feel helpless. Like we
Mhm.
need these heroes to, because against Thanos, you and I couldn't take, even if we teamed up and we had a tank, we wouldn't be able to take him. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like you're threatened by that, and you're going, "Oh man, if he snapped his fingers, maybe my kids would disappear, my wife, maybe I'd be the only one left." And you get that sense. But this idea of multiple Kangs coming for us,
Hmm.
and that timeline doesn't just branch like they showed in the TVA. This is
Yeah.
like branches on branches on branches. Like it is like it looks like a vein. Like
Yeah.
it's just branching off and going wild. Which of course, Multiverse of Madness and Quantum Mania. These are the next movie titles, but it definitely is doing that. It's definitely setting things up, and I'm really excited because now you start to feel you along with Loki start to feel this helplessness, and you feel insignificant. It's just like, oh, so I'm just a barrier.
Yeah.
It's like, am I the real me? If there are other ones, and which I do want to say, this is I'm not going to go off on it because we have to stay on topic, but this has made me go off
This whole
on
thing is a
tangents at
tangent.
work.
Just do it.
I know. But this tangent, like, it would get me going into quantum physics and everything because
Okay.
I've been like studying that for like a year. And there is an app, I'll say it's called the Universe Splitter in the App Store, and apparently it connects to it connects to a machine that fires a particle at a split mirror, and you put in two choices, like in universe A, I go for a walk. In universe B, I take a shower, and then it splits like the particle goes off and it measures which universe you're in, and it gives you the outcome, and you can see a result of how many branches of a universe you've created over time if you keep making um, these little quantum events that happen. Another thing too is, and this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to refrain on going onto these unrelated tangents, even though they kind of are.
Yeah.
If you really want to know just how crazy quantum physics are, just look up something called um, the it's a double slit experiment or double slot experiment. If you Google that, you'll see like a bunch of different videos on, and they explain that. That'll just show you how insane quantum physics actually is. So like Marvel's really doing their homework with this. I mean, as much as they can, because we don't have a lot of like actual like data on this, but
Right.
um that's a whole other thing. That'd
Yeah.
be like a science tangent. But I will say, going back to Loki, I don't know about you if you talk to friends and family, but when I asked them, like I watched it, and then I went into work after watching it, and I asked people, like I had a big grin on my face, and I'm like, so, and they're like, yeah, you're gonna ask me if I saw it, and most of my coworkers said, yeah, they saw the last episode, but they're kind of underwhelmed when they saw
Really.
He Who Remains. And I was expecting that, because I think everybody wanted to see uh, something huge or bigger than Goliath. You know what I mean? Like something
Right.
like, and this is like what we got was the best version of Kang that we have, and he's going to be quirky like that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I had no problem with him being that way, because it's like he's the what how do they refer to him, as like a stifling dictator? It's like
Yeah. Something like that.
it's Yeah, so it's like that's the best version we're getting. And he's like this, and he's in control of everything. And he's a good guy. So can you imagine, and he's doing what he thinks is right, which again Thanos was too. So it's a good way to start off the villain too,
Mhm.
because you see it from his perspective. He's trying to keep everybody safe from the other hymns. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
isn't that
again, you have somebody who's, trying to quote unquote protect us all or do the universe a favor.
yeah, isn't that wild that like and that's assuming that you believe everything that he says. Like if he is trying to prune these sort of like alternate timelines just to try to keep some semblance of peace. It is interesting. And I ultimately I can't wait to see what the next iteration of Kang looks like, which leads to the question, which begs the question: if Kang is supposed to show up at Ant-Man in the next Ant-Man film, Ant-Man
I
2
think Quantum Mania.
or Ant-Man 3, excuse me,
Yeah.
Quantumania. Um, they're clearly teeing up that there's going to be a lot of Kangs because that's the whole premise that like
Oh
he
God.
describes
Yeah.
that there's a bunch of them and he basically had to get rid of all the rest of them and keep more from coming. So there's no way that in all of Kang's power that Ant-Man would even stand a chance. So this has got to be like a weaker version of Kang or a younger version of Kang,
Or
right?
the
Like
smartest.
maybe. I mean, now granted, Ant-Man helped figure out the entire way to save everything in Avengers Endgame, but still we can't expect him to actually defeat. He can only defeat one of the kings, right? If even that. Like I just can't imagine what the plot is going to be like for Ant-Man 3, based off
Yeah.
of what He Who Remains has described in episode 6 of Loki. And a lot's going to happen because I don't think that movie is comes out for 2 more years. So a lot can change and evolve in the next 2 years. But that was crossing my mind as I'm seeing these reminders that, oh yeah, this actor Jonathan Majors, who plays He Who Remains, he's going to be in Ant-Man as Kang. And I'm thinking, well, that's got to just be a weak version or an in passing version. um I don't know. Do
Well,
you have
here's
any thoughts?
it's interesting when you say it's got to be the weak version. He's obviously outsmarted everybody else because he harnessed the power of Eliath, and he has he's control of everything. So I think that's I think maybe part of him wanted Sylvie to kill him. So you know what I mean? Because maybe he wanted to be done with this, and maybe he wanted to kind of let the other versions of himself take over. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but you know, he might not be the weakest one. You know what I mean? He might, like, intelligence can give you like the edge.
Well, that's what
Um,
I guess what I mean is like assuming that Ant-Man's ending doesn't end with
oh,
Ant-Man
gotcha.
being defeated and he somehow wins at something, whether he gets Kang, it's a different version of Kang. And now maybe the film ends with Ant-Man losing some kind of battle and running away, and really all he has, to be proud of at the end of the film is some intel, on this new villain that they're going to be facing. The greater Avengers League. But that's what's intriguing. Like I'm more intrigued by what they're going to do with Kang as a villain now that I know that they're not introducing him in the movie, that they're actually he's already been introduced and we're going to see him again.
Yeah.
Now maybe it'll just be a really subtle actual film debut where they, it'll feel like a debut for the people who are only watching the films, but for anyone watching the shows it'll just be another appearance. I don't know. I guess my assumption is that the movie's got to end on with Ant-Man beating something or winning somehow, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's not what we're in for.
Well, when they say, yeah, if they say he's cast as the villain, um, I mean, could you have technically said that Thanos was the villain in the first Avengers movie? Because he was in it, even though Loki was doing everything. Well, not Loki.
Technically,
He was leading the army. Like, could you say Thanos was like the villain? Because even though he was kind of on the sidelines, like, is it going to be like that where it's Kang's armies, or
yeah, I don't
is it going to be a battle in the quantum realm? I don't know.
that's what I don't know. Or maybe Ant-Man 3 is going to end with Ant-Man losing some battle to Kang, but the takeaway from the movie is that he learned something that can help the Avengers. I don't know. It's really interesting. We'll have to wait and see. So here's
And I
another.
also,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
well, I was gonna throw in another question. So go ahead and finish your thought.
I was gonna say, I wonder if the tone of the third Ant Man movie will be changed, because the first two are kind of like comedy. You know what I mean? They're kind of
Mhm.
funny. But if the first version of Kang that we've seen, the nice quote unquote, nicest version of him has been killed off, and only the bad ones remain. Well, I can't really see if we're gonna see this villain as a threat. I, I can't. It's gonna be hard for me to take it as a serious threat if it's kind of a goofy movie, or
Right.
maybe it ends serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe we're gonna see Court Jester King. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So let me throw a random question at you. Loki, the series was full of boatloads of Easter eggs. Do you have a favorite Easter egg from the whole season?
Well, there's a lot. Apparently, and so that's the thing. There are so many YouTube videos, and you could pause this thing frame by frame and go through everything.
Mm-hmm.
I There's an Easter egg that I'm not sure that's confirmed, but you remember there was a version of the Sphinx in there, like when they were driving around. I thought I saw the Sphinx. Um, it made me think back, and I'll have to go and check now. I thought one of Kang's ships was disguised as the Sphinx or something in the past, and I wonder if that was like one of them. But I mean, there's like Frog Thor, of course. Um,
Yeah.
like there's that, and then I mean, there's a lot. There's a
I
lot. That's the one thing I was gonna say is it's like I would leave that up to all those like really. There's a lot of really well done YouTube videos where they go through all those little
Oh yeah.
um, Easter eggs.
Yeah, I there's so many of those. I thought it would be fun to just highlight our favorite for that exact reason. But I will say my favorite was the Thanos copter, uh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
which
yeah,
I just
yeah.
thought was freaking hilarious. And if you don't know the comic reference, just Google Thanos
Thanos.
copter comic, and you'll see, you'll see it's ridiculous and it's so good.
Yeah,
I was so
I'm
excited.
glad they put that stuff in there.
It's just such a beautiful way to throw in some of these most it's like the classic Loki costume that I said first. Like
Yeah,
it's just such an absurd thing, but they just find a way to make it work and like put this stuff in there without it feeling forced. And it's so good. Um Man, it's so good. Okay, that was another fun question. So here's a question about casting. So like we had a bunch of main characters. Obviously, Tom Hiddleston back as Loki. We've had plenty of time to fall in love with Tom Hiddleston there. We had Ravana Renslayer. We obviously had Sylvie, which was the alternate version of Loki. Owen Wilson is Mobius. Um, and a handful of other characters. I want to say Ravana's name. But I'm gonna butcher it. It's Gugu Mbatha Raw, or maybe it's I don't know. I'm gonna go with Gugu, but that's probably way wrong. Anyways, and Sylvie is played by the actress Sophia Di Martino.
he's
So
awesome.
let's call that the main cast. So let's say between Loki, Sylvie, Mobius, and Ravana. Um, this might be too easy. Did you have a favorite character, for the series? I mean, it's obviously based on Loki, so it kind of lends itself to picking Loki.
Well,
Um,
everybody did such a good job. Okay, I'll say this. My disappointment, like the one disappointment I had, was Owen Wilson didn't go, wow. He does that in everything, but he didn't go,
everyone expected
wow.
him to do it.
Yeah, he just didn't do it. It's like, come on, man. Like he, maybe. Well, I guess he is a variant of Owen Wilson's. But I also want to give a shout out to Tara Strong, who did Miss Minutes.
Oh,
She
yeah.
she's like a voice. She's like a god of voice acting.
Oh
She
man.
does everything from like Timmy Turner from the Fairly Odd Parents to like Twilight Sparkle and My Little Pony to, oh my god, to, I can't even count them all. She
Yeah.
does so many like voices. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I'm gonna
Um,
I'm gonna come back to Mrs. Minutes for sure because I have a question for you there.
yeah.
But I remember seeing the Loki poster before the season came out and seeing that cartoon clock on the poster and Owen Wilson and just thinking, what in the heck is this series going to be about? I think my favorite, I mean, again, Tom Hiddleston kind of feels like you almost have to pick him because we've we've had so much time with him. But if I'm not, I really loved the actress for Ravonna Renslayer. I thought she
She's
was
great.
so good. Sylvie was so good. And it, Owen Wilson somehow fits in the universe so well that I just immediately accepted it. It didn't even take time. But I think Ravonna, the actress for Ravonna Renslayer, was my favorite. I think as an actress in a role, selling me on a part. But with a big asterisk next to that, if I can say a dynamic between two characters, Loki and Mobius together, it was
Mm.
just so good. The banter. I've only known Mobius for 6 episodes of the MCU, but if Loki and Mobius don't see one another again or stay friends, I will burn everything to the ground. Like
Yeah.
those two need to come back together. Like I have a deep, deep need now for those two to like be on screen again together after this. Um,
And
it
I
was
do
they're
have an interesting theory
so
too.
good. Please, please.
Um, I was thinking about it, how the TVA specifically targets Lokis because they tend to be a problem, even when they haven't done anything yet.
Right,
And the universe is, second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Like entropy is essentially chaos. Like Loki and chaos. Like if there's one thing that is predictable at the universe, it's chaos. In a way. Um, it's like Loki is a necessary element. Like they say he always loses, but he says they always lose, but they always survive. And it was making me think like the only way to have order in the universe and to just keep things from totally branching off, like, is to seriously prune all of the Lokis that you can.
right,
You know what I mean? Because if anything's going to spawn chaos, it's going to be the god of mischief, So
right,
I found that like really awesome that like he's like this necessary component more than he would know himself
right.
of the universe to exist in its state, because in my mind I'm thinking, Loki is entropy basically.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
I was
Sorry.
just gonna say, I think you're spot on. It's funny to think that the show is about Loki, like Tom Hiddleston Loki, but it's if Loki were a state of mind or a state of being or its own character format, but in like action form, the series is about Loki as as an effect on the universe, right?
Yeah.
It's and that we see that even with like Kang, like it's those personality type, the whole show, all the variants, all the problems caused, all the things that cause these breaks from this primary timeline. It's all about those types of people that cause those issues in the universe. You just happen to see one of them sort of seeing how what his type of person in the universe, what kind of effect it has on the universe. And it's super
And there's
fascinating to watch. Like that was so much character development for somebody you're supposed to think is a villain coming straight out of the Battle of New York in the first Avengers film,
yeah.
to watch his whole life, to see his what happens with his family, what happens to himself. The like you already mentioned it, perfect like nod to the Infinity Stones are worthless. There's things that are so much bigger at play than himself and Thanos. It was just fascinating for a series just called Loki about how much bigger that whole idea is that they explored. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's and even when the title flashes and you see all the different letters changing to different versions of the letters and in the name Loki, it's almost like you said, is the series really about just the one specific Loki from our universe, or is it really just about Loki as an effect on the universe? That's why they flash the different ones. It's not really just about him, it's about the concept of Loki possibly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um
that's my total amateur interpretation. It's not even about all the Lokis. It's about anyone in the universe that is a Loki type that causes chaos,
yeah.
that creates problem. And it's so fascinating. Speaking of creating problems, let's go back to Mrs. Minute for a second.
Yeah.
She's friggin' up to something, right? Like, did you read episode 6 the same way with Miss Minutes?
I just figured she, well, so she seemed to be like almost like her own thing, because Kang even says like, "Oh, is she still calling me that?" It's kind of like he just left her. So either he just it's something, because remember, like all the Kangs at first they were peaceful and they were exchanging knowledge from universe to universe to help this universe. It's like, here's this technology to help your universe. Oh, thanks. Here's this technology to help your universe. So she could be some kind of a construct from one of the multiverses that like helped another one. So that's why they have all this, advanced technology. But I can't. I want to know how you read it, because either to me it just felt like she was kind of like still under Kang, and as far as as far as his leadership goes, it's just like one of his minions. That's kind of the way I took it. But she is definitely up to something. I mean, it feels like she's sentient, like she's, you know, self-aware. It's not like she's taking orders as far as I can see.
Yeah, I felt the same way by the end. So initially I thought, oh, this is just some sort of projection technology inside the TVA that, it's just there to answer questions or whatever. And then certainly by the end of the show, it's like this is a whole other thing completely. And we just assume, or I don't want to say we, because I'm dumber than the average viewer. I just assume that either Miss Minutes worked for Ravonna Renslayer or for Kang the whole time. Until I started thinking about it, and I'm like, there could be a whole other entity out there that could be responsible for Mrs. Minutes. Like this could be a Doctor Strange projection. We could find out down the road. That could be, and it's not. That's not what they're doing. But like that idea popped in my head. This could be completely unrelated. Maybe Mrs. Minutes has no loyalty to the Kang that we've seen, or He Who Remains, or Ravonna Renslayer, and this could be something else entirely. I just there was the whole um you know Adam and Eve Garden of Eden, Snake take the bite of the apple, Mrs. Minutes trying to offer to the Lokis this whole like,
Hmm.
we'll give you that whole thing just felt like she's not just serving Kang. And then the interaction with Ravana. So I have no idea. I have no good theories about what she's up to. But she's up to something, and I just don't know what it is yet. I hope she comes back. I'm sure in season 2 we'll see Mrs. Minutes again. If not, I will be very disappointed.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely something going on there.
Speaking of season 2, this is the first Disney Plus series that we've been told that officially there's a season 2. We might have talked about this on the tangents for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I don't know that for me, WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier necessarily felt like they needed a season 2. I would gobble it up if they made it. But I don't know that I felt like they needed it. This was the first one that I'm like, unless they do a lot of explaining in the next couple Marvel, like Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home, I really need to see more. So I guess a bunch of people already knew. I wasn't following the news that this was already out there, that there was going to be another season.
Oh
Do
yeah,
you
yeah.
feel the same way? Like, was this one that you like? Do you feel like it completed itself, or do you feel like there's definitely more we need to see in a season 2?
Well, now that time could be happening at the same time, you know what I mean? So it's like they could go through like the Eternals, and he could, like, the time doesn't apply the same in the TVA.
Right.
So whatever happens in season two could happen at any point in the
Right.
Marvel in the next like 10 years. So
Right.
it could come out in like, they can make season two could come out in like 3 years, but still take place immediately after, because the time works there differently. So there's a lot of flexibility, but I absolutely would love to see, because Loki's kind of stuck there
Yeah.
in a different version now, in a different universe with the Kang statues everywhere in the TVA. So,
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. And frankly, because they're jumping through time, and a lot could happen without, with literally just minutes passing in what would be considered our part of the universe and our Earth. They could literally, it won't happen, but they could literally make 15 seasons of Loki, and it wouldn't matter because they could just be jumping through time without our time
yeah.
passing at all. And so I know I'm sure they won't do that. I'm sure that maybe a season 2 or a season 2 and 3 it probably is max. I'm sure Tom Hiddleston doesn't necessarily want to play Loki forever. Although from all the interviews, he seems super grateful to be playing the part still and excited about it. So I'm looking forward to season 2. I hope that they run it as long as they have great ideas, whether that's one more season or 5 more. And I was just really excited that it was left open ended. This is the first one we've got confirmed for a season 2. So any final thoughts on the whole season or the final episode, the conversation with He Who Remains? Any final thoughts that you want to share?
No, I mean, I like it a lot. I like there's a lot under the surface of what Marvel's doing. Just they're just doing it really well for me, and setting it up, and even my coworkers, and people that I've talked to that were kind of like meh about the initial meeting with Kang. They said by the end of the episode, they're really excited. So even if it started off a little bit slow for them, they still said, like, by the end, I haven't talked to a single person that wasn't excited for what's coming next. Um, Even if it might have started out slow for them. Because I'll admit, I was a little like, that's it, it was just a
Right.
human when there's just a human being sitting there eating an apple. But then leading up to it and then leaving it, once he explained that there are like other versions of him, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But no, they're doing everything well. I'm really excited for what's coming down the line. Um, Overall, I just really loved it. I literally love everything we're getting into, because even before we got into this, I was looking into the whole like multiverse thing, and just they're basing it off of theories, like current scientific theories, and they're doing a really good job, and it's fascinating, and it's going to be really cool to see what happens.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful, man. Yeah, I when I asked about characters earlier, Ravana, Loki, Mobius, and Sylvie, your favorite, I purposefully left out Jonathan Majors, the actor for He Who Remains. He's done a lot of stuff people would know him for, movies like Lovecraft Country, The
yeah, he's
Last
great.
Black Man in San Francisco, White Boy Rick, When We Rise. Because frankly, in my opinion, um, if there was a way to steal the whole show by only being in one episode and a couple scenes, Jonathan Majors freaking did it. Like, there's a lot of ways Kang could have gone wrong if they didn't have a crazy strong actor who played apathetic and a little crazy and a little ambivalent. I just he did so much with so little that if there was an award for our favorite actor of the whole season, we gave it if they were in every episode. But if there's an award for like best collective like scenes, frankly, I think Jonathan Majors takes the award for his portrayal in the last.
Well, yeah,
It was incredible. He
that's
basically,
that's a sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say he basically like talked at them for half the episode, and it was freaking brilliant. So
Yeah,
it was so good.
yeah. I was gonna say, one thing that he did really well was he must know, because if it is going to be Kang, which we're pretty sure it is, and the
Yeah.
other ones are going to be deadly and scary, he is doing a really good job in presenting to us contrast.
Right.
So when we look back on the version that he's playing here, and this
Mhm.
is not it's not easy. He has to be himself, but he has to be a different version of himself. And that
Right.
sounds kind of simple, but simple isn't always easy.
Right.
So what he's doing is really complicated now, in my opinion. I definitely couldn't do it, but he's basically like, "Hey, I'm the same guy, but I'm very quirky because I've been stuck here for I can't even tell you how many lifetimes." And the other version of him, when you see him, it's going to be the same face and the same character, but an evil version, and
Yep.
it's hopefully going to be scarier and more intimidating than Thanos, which I know he can pull it off. You know what I mean? And I'm
Yep.
saying what's brilliant about the way he acted in episode 6.
Yep. Spot on, man. Well, thank you so much for coming back to do another episode of Tangents. This is already my favorite Tangents episode for all time, always. If you're a fan of tangents, check out the rest of our episodes right here on YouTube, or our normal podcast episodes, literally everywhere that you can listen to podcasts, because we're there. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk again soon.